Hi there, this is Alfie Whattam, London's tech recruiter and the host of the London Technology Podcast. Today I'm joined by Oyvind. Thanks for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi Alfie, thanks very much for having me. I'm Oyvind Valland. I'm the CTO for Kidly. Kidly is a online store for parents, modern parents who have kids in the age of 0 to 5. I've worked in tech, in software development since 2004, when I had my first job with an advertising agency in Sydney in Australia. It was an agency called Oyvinds. I kind of fell into software development or IT kind of like by chance, because prior to that job, I'd been studying music. I've been studying classical music performance. I played trumpet, and I'd done that for about 3 years until one day I had a realization that this isn't for me. I need to do something else. And I was in Australia at the time, and because so I wouldn't violate my my visa, I needed to find something else to do. I needed to find something else to study, and I didn't know what to do. But I was thinking, what interests me? And I got to thinking about my dad, who had taught me some programming when I was like 12, 13 years old. He wrote computer simulations in Fortran, simulating stuff of large diesel engines and vibrations in diesel engines and that kind of thing. And I was always pestering him, and he taught me some Fortran, and I tinkered with that, and I was forever playing with his computer. And I thought, well, computers are fun. Maybe I should do something like that. And so I enrolled in a Bachelor of Science degree, it's Bachelor of Science in Information Technology, I think it was called, at the University of Technology in Sydney. And as part of that degree, I had to do a year of sort of work practice or whatever they called it. And I got a role at this advertising agency. And we were basically we were building small microsites, websites, advertising campaigns, doing advertising emails, all sorts of stuff. We even built games in Flash and all sorts of things. Anyway, so it's my first role. And I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the web. So 2004, still, early-ish days. After a couple of years of doing that, I moved to London. And my first job in London was with ASOS, the massive online retailer. And I think you interviewed Andy White, actually, a little while ago.
Yeah, I've interviewed a few people that have worked there before, and similar companies.
Yeah. So I met Andy there after a few years. When I joined ASOS, that was in 2006. I think I was the 4th developer on that team. So it's, early days. And it was really, really interesting. And although that was really only my second job, something clicked for me when I worked there. And I kind of realized that retail and technology for retail, that's interesting. That's something that I find really, really interesting. And I worked there, stayed there only, I think, for about 18 months. And then I decided to move on, and I moved to a company. I don't know if they're around anymore, but they were called Snow Valley, and they had an e-commerce platform that they had built. So they built and serviced an e-commerce platform, and they had e-commerce clients. So I was still in retail, really loved that, but I was now on the service provider side of it. And there was much more focus on technology in that company than there had been at ASOS. So it was a new perspective. It's still really, really interesting. And I was there for a while, but then I was convinced to come back to ASOS, which I did. I have a long history with ASOS, in and out of ASOS. And so I came back to ASOS to help out with some projects around social media. So this was, now we're talking 2007, 2008. Social media, Facebook had been around for a while, but social media was a big thing that every company was trying to embrace, and ASOS was certainly, gung-ho on that. And so I came back for that, and also to try and build up a ASOS marketplace. So I came back, and then the credit crunch happened in 2008, and these projects were put on hold. And they carried on with them, but they were put on hold, and I moved on into more of an architectural role rather than a developer role. And looking back at it, I mean, I'd only been doing development for about 4 years, so it's kind of crazy. I ended up, doing architecture at ASOS, which I really enjoyed because like I said, I've developed this fascination with retail and what technology can do for retail, and became really interested in building reliable, valuable systems for an organization. Anyways, I was there until the end of 2010, I think. And then I left and I joined a couple of guys that I'd met through somebody who had previously worked at ASOS. And we thought, well, this social media thing, let's see what can we do. So we thought we could build a new social media platform for local communities. That was essentially the idea. It never went anywhere, and I spent all my savings living out of my own pocket trying to do it. But it was an enormous learning experience, really positive learning experience overall. Then after that, I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I got a contract with a company that was working for Tesco, doing TescoEntertainment.com. And then, they were doing media streaming as well as media sales, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray, that kind of thing. So it was more retail and even more hardcore technology this time. And it was really, really interesting. And I was there for a couple of years when Tesco Entertainment was wound down and brought into a new Tesco platform. At which point I was looking around for work and I ended up as a contractor back at ASOS once again. and then I was working on other aspects of retail. I think the reason I ended up going back to ASOS so many times is that what I find fascinating about retail and technology is that there is probably something there for anyone. Anyone who's a developer, because certainly if the retailer is large, they do so many different things. You can work on the obvious things like the front end, what your customers see, but there is an infinite number of things going on in the background, supported by technology. And I'm not an infrastructure guy, but in a business like ASOS, we've got thousands of employees. The infrastructure side of it is enormous. Security and all of this is enormous. So it's I suppose you could say that about just about any industry, but for me, retail is the thing that clicks. And I ended up back there. We were working on warehousing systems or integration with them, and also some price management things for a few years. And then at the end of 2014, I decided I'm going to take a few months off because we're expecting my son at that time. So he was born in early 2015. And it was when I was starting to look around for work again, sometime in early 2015, I got to speaking with James Hart, who's the CEO of Kidley. He was the first employee of ASOS. I just kind of, by fluke, ended up having a conversation with him in early 2015. And he said, do you want to be my CTO? Do you want to join? I've got this idea for a thing I want to do. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. And we met up and Kidley started. I guess it was June 2015 or something like that when we started, and we opened in 2016. We opened our store. So we've built at Kidley, we've built our own e-commerce platform. It's bespoke, and I run all of the technology there, and I've got a small dev team under me. So I guess that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. So you've been in the industry for a while, obviously with different roles. What advice do you have for people that are just starting their tech journeys?
Oh, I'm careful with advice, but I've thought about it a little bit, and I think when you're just starting out, maybe you shouldn't worry too much about your first job. It is, of course, exciting to work for big companies, reputable companies, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and so on. And if that's your aspiration, by all means, go for it. But if you can't get a job like that, then I really wouldn't worry about it. I don't think it matters too much where you start, actually. But there are some things you should pay attention to when you're looking for your first role. And it's kind of obvious maybe, but look for something that's interesting, that you think is interesting, because you'll learn so much more if your job inspires you. If it bores you, you're not really going to learn that much from it, I think. And another thing about your first job would be to try and find a place where there are people who can support you and people who you can learn from. Maybe avoid being the only guy or the only girl who writes code in the company for your very first role, because I think it's really important to be surrounded by people who you can learn from, because, well, when you start out, you're completely fresh, right? And in all likelihood, you have everything to learn, and it's best to have somebody to learn from and learn with than to be on your own. I think I'd say that. And then also, I think you should try your hand at different things, whether that is just doing different types of development for the same company, try out being a front-end developer or build microservices or work on databases. Try different things, both to find what it is that tickles you and what you really like to do, but also just to get that wider experience. If you can, try and work for some big companies where there's lots of structure and lots of things going on, and we meet lots of people, but also try and work for the smaller companies. Maybe work for a consultancy if you're into software development. Try that. Work in-house as well. If you can, work for different companies. It just broadens your horizons. I think that would be advice. Obviously, that's going to take many years to do all of those things, but I think it would be worthwhile. And another thing I've thought about, back to my first few years, just starting out specifically. I don't want to give the place a bad name at all, but I worked for this company, this advertising agency in Sydney, and the amount of things that I learned from seeing things being done badly compared to seeing things being done well. With hindsight, I guess I can say this, that there's a lot to be learned from observing and looking out for the things that aren't done so well, the things that don't work so well. And it could be anything, it could be a badly architected system, poorly written code, just processes in the business that don't work. There's a lot to be learned from that. And one thing that I always learned loads from was watching people fix problems that they had created. I remember one particular instance. This was very, very early on, and it just stood out in my mind. It was like a crystal clear example of this. There was a marketing campaign that we'd been working on where we were sending tens of thousands of emails. So this is like back in 2003, 2004. Tens of thousands of emails went out to customers, and they were paying. The client was paying several dollars per email, right, for this to go out. And we were just basically trying to capture some basic information: name, email address, sign up, and we'll enter you into a draw. Well, that was all good. The website looked great. Everybody loved it. And the campaign was a massive success until we went to collect the data and realized that somebody had forgotten to run the script to deploy the relevant database tables to capture that data. What do you do then, right? You've charged your client probably 200,000 Australian dollars, and we had no data. And to watch the mad scramble to fix that, and we actually managed to recover from it through scraping data out of logs and whatnot. It was just a massive, massive learning experience. And there's loads of stuff. That's a catastrophic example, if you like. But there's loads of stuff that you can learn from seeing how things shouldn't be done. Because I think then, you learn from those and you don't do them, you don't make the same mistakes yourself. Or you make the mistake once and you don't do it again. I think that's all I'll say about advice.
No, that's definitely good advice. That's really useful. That's good. Brilliant. So if you were to look into the future, into your crystal ball, are there any technologies which you're excited about, which you think will have a big impact on the future ahead?
I've thought about that question as well when you first told me that about it. And so it's been a long time since I personally got really, really fired up and excited about any specific technology. in my early years as a developer, I did, but I kind of came to a realization that I would let others bleed on the bleeding edge. So there, I don't think I have anything specific, any specific technology that I think is particularly exciting and that I want to point out here. But what I do see happening, which I think is hugely exciting, is more at the macro level. Technology is absolutely everywhere. I guess it always has been, but now more than ever. And there's opportunity for anyone in any area of life if you know something about technology and software development. I mean, it is absolutely everywhere. My son started school last year, and I was just astounded at the amount. He's been in year R in reception. I'm just astounded at the amount of technology that's already involved in it. The systems, the apps we have on our phones for this, that, and the other, and communicating with a parent, with the teachers, and it is everywhere. And I think that's brilliant for people who are coming into this now. I mean, the world really is your oyster, and you can do so much. More specifically, and thing that I think is quite exciting is how the large vendors of home automation and automation systems in general are kind of meshing now. Home automation, there used to be little compatibility between devices and systems, and that's changing. And I think no one can tell what's going to come out of that. And that's really quite exciting. I think the interoperability between companies' different systems in that area. I find that really, really quite fascinating. But I'm a guy that watches a little bit from the sideline on these things.
It's a good way of looking at it, letting others be on the bleeding edge so they can make the mistakes and see what works, what doesn't work, and it gives you an opportunity to do the things that are more likely to be successful.
Yeah, I guess it ties back to what I said as well, learning from others' mistakes, and learning from the things that go wrong and so on. And I'm really interested in building in system design and architecture, while I'm still very much of the opinion that if you're going to be a good system designer, you have to be able to do as well as design. So I'm very much hands-on in my team at Kidley. I'm responsible for all systems design and architecture, but I build the systems as well. But with that perspective, I'm not so interested in the latest and the greatest of technologies. I watch from the sidelines a little bit and see what proves itself, I think, and then that's what we use over time. I'm more focused on stability and what's proven. But that's me personally, and that's not to say that you shouldn't be excited about the latest and greatest, because you absolutely should. There's so much fun stuff out there, so many fascinating things happening.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to get your ideas and insights. That was really useful. So thank you for your time, and thank you to everybody for watching as well.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.